Buenas noches, good evening. I'm joining you from Tampa Bay. I work for Green Faith as an organizer. I'm also a member of Hope via Palmacia Presbyterian Church, and I'm also a Presbyterian pastor. So I was at a conversation with environmental activists from Latin America just last week, discussing Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, both verses mentioned on this paragraph section of Laudato Si. And the questions that one of the participants asked was, how do we reconcile the call to care for the earth in Genesis 2, which other biblical scholars also prefer to translate as to serve, with passages like Genesis 1, dominion, and Psalm 8, where it says that humans were made a little lower than the angels, crowned with glory and honor, and made rulers over the works of God's hands. How do we reconcile dominion with serving is my question. Laudato Si points out to the importance of reading sacred scripture in its own context, as Reverend Gabriel just mentioned too, and also points to other scriptural passages that can be more helpful to our present moment. For example, as also Rabbi Dan clearly has mentioned, Genesis 2 certainly seems to be more helpful to us than Genesis 1. But I also like to point out to another biblical interpretation tool that I think we have at our disposal. And this tool is asking nature herself to tell us, to correct our misunderstandings. Just like we hear God telling Job in chapter 2, ask the animals and they will teach you. Or Jesus in Matthew 6 telling the disciples, look at the birds of the air and the lilies of the field, to find wisdom to live as human beings made in God's image. It is certainly the climate and environmental crisis that we are all witnessing, the one that is sending us back to scripture and back to our traditions to find wisdom. But there is also wisdom, divine wisdom, to harvest in the natural world, in the knowledge that scientists are bringing forth to us to understand the climate change and its threat to humanity, and the world's creatures that we share with this precious planet. So when I think about being made in God's image and given dominion at the same time, I'm drawn to try to understand not only what my role is, but how do I fit in creation? What is my place? And for that, I like to share about an article that I read on Huffington Post a few years ago. Thank you, Megan. Um, and on this article, um, eh, eh, which was posted on Huffington Post, it showed the handprint of an 8-year-old boy on a petri dish after being cultured by his mother, who is a microbiologist. Whatever bacteria was on his hand had a chance to grow into the cultures that we see in this picture. His mother wanted to remind people that we are all covered in germs and that is not a bad thing. All these are common bacteria that live everywhere, including inside our bodies, which interestingly enough help us maintain a healthy immune system. Microbes in our guts help us digest the food and absorb vitamins. Skin bacteria keep our skin moist, preventing cracks and the invasion of pathogens, which is bad bacteria. The study said that we have 100 trillion microbes living in our bodies that have co-evolved with us. In just our mouths alone, there are 5,000 species of bacteria. And our mother's milk, not being pasteurized, has more than 600 species of bacteria in it. So when one thinks about being made in God's image and given dominion, we just need to look at the reality of our own bodies, how we exist, to realize that being made in God's image also means being made one with the earth, just like God is one. Something that Native Americans have known and told us many times. Whatever we do to the earth, we do it to ourselves. There is not separatedness in the way that God created the world and the way that God created us. Being made in God's image means that we cannot be us without the many other living beings that provide us with health. There are more others living in each of us, while there are of ourselves, well, there's only one of ourselves. So the value of self as an independent individual, so much responsible for today's environmental degradation and the suffering of the most vulnerable communities, people, and creatures, does not exist at all in nature. It is part of that falsehood Reverend Shirley mentioned at the beginning of the call. And I want to share that perhaps then it's time for us to look at justice as what I heard a professor tell me in the seminary, Jake McDaniel, as faithfulness to relationships. We were made to live in community. So any faithful act of dominion, of caring or serving needs to be mindful of this web of relationships which connects us, want it or not, with a larger web called the earth, our home, where we exist, experience God, and find our well-being. Thank you.